Hello, my name is Kreiter, and I'm the Middle School and High School Activities Director at Central DeWitt. Today, my presentation topic is going to be our Athletic Leadership Group. Like all of you, I was disappointed we didn't get a chance to get together this spring for our AD convention. It's always a great time to see everybody, have camaraderie, and do some storytelling. But I was excited that Harley reached out to those of us scheduled to present to see if we'd be willing to give our presentation in this alternate format. This is my 33rd and final year, all at Central DeWitt. I've had 25 years in the classroom as a science teacher and coach, and the last 8 as our AD. Our athletic leadership group actually originated with my predecessor, Brent Cook, at Dubuque Senior. At that time, we called it the Captain's Council. So today I'm going to talk about the organization of our athletic leadership group as we run it now. If you have any questions regarding any of these slides, you can contact me at the email shown above through the end of this school year, or any time after that at my personal email listed below. As I mentioned, I coached for 25 years. I was the head wrestling coach for Central DeWitt for 20 years and was the Sabres head football coach for another 12, 8 of those that overlapped. And we had some success throughout the years in both sports, and I loved the X's and O's and the strategies involved. I was somebody who really probably enjoyed the practices more than the competition, but the thing that I became most fascinated with over my time was the difference that leadership made on teams. It had so much more to do with success than strategies and concepts and even talent. And we've all seen that in all of our programs that you can get by with a little lesser talent if you have great leadership, and the opposite is true as well. As an athlete myself, and then later as a coach, I also became very interested in the ideas of goal setting. We know how powerful they can be for both individuals and a team. So throughout the year in our leadership group meetings, we spend time talking about the concepts of goal setting, and I give them resources that they can use to help them set their own goals and also help their team set goals. Some of you know I've got a son in the NFL. He's no longer with the Denver Broncos. He's now been picked up by the New York Giants. You can see by the pictures that his hand placement has not changed a whole lot from the time he was a Sabre to his time with the Hawks and now in the NFL, but his stance has changed quite a bit. I've not included these pictures for that reason, but to mention that goal setting is something that he's really gravitated towards throughout his career. If you've ever got a chance to coach your own son or daughter, you know that sometimes that can be quite a challenge. The message that you're giving other student athletes is not always heard the same way by them, which makes sense because of the relationships we have. But one message he did pick up on as a freshman was that of goal setting. Early in his freshman career, my wife and I came home, and above his bed was taped a poster board full of goals. It was poorly written, and he had goals for football, wrestling, track, baseball. He had lifting goals. He had academic goals, leadership goals, better person goals. They ran the gamut. And in many cases, he had set those goals extremely high. My wife and I worried about that, but they were his goals, so we really said nothing about that. We actually ignored them. By the time he was a senior, that bad-looking poster was still there, but it was amazing how many of those goals, not all of them, but many of them he had achieved. He then went on to the University of Iowa, and after his games, we would meet with the other families in the apartment for dinner, and then adjourn to his room for more private family time. And above his bed, taped his freshman year, was now a typed set of goals. Again, he had goals for academics, for lifting, for leadership, better person, and he had football goals. Just like in high school, he had set his goals extremely high, and in our opinion, maybe too high because he had included NFL aspirations. But like before, we said nothing and let it play out. By the time he was a senior, he was selected as a permanent captain for the Hawks. He'd achieved all Big Ten honors, including academic all Big Ten honors, and got an opportunity with the Dallas Cowboys through free agency to make it into the NFL. He was cut twice by the Cowboys, and during his time there, we would Skype from time to time to check in and see how things were going. And while we had him on video, I noticed that there was a small sheet of paper taped above his bed, and I knew exactly what it was without seeing anything written on it. After his second time cut by the Cowboys, he signed a teaching contract to teach science at Iowa City schools. During that time, he was picked up by the Denver Broncos and attempted to make their team that summer. I went to visit him in Denver, and while he was at practice, I noticed taped above his mantle was a list of goals. They were no longer written as goals, now they were belief statements. He believed that he was the hardest worker in the league. He believed that he deserved to make this team because he was the best. He believed that someday he would be a captain for an NFL team, and he believed that he would be an all-pro performer. The power of goals is incredible. As I mentioned, Mr. Cook was extremely influential in the development of our leadership group. He had invited me to participate in his captain's council, and I learned a great deal from him. At the University of Iowa, Casey was the football program's representative of ISAC, which is the Student Athlete Advisory Committee, and they were doing several things that I thought would work really well into the organization of our group. In the first few years of running our meetings, I would purchase leadership manuals and use their curriculums throughout the year to help me get organized. But after 25 years of coaching, I had gathered so many resources that I thought were extremely valuable to share that I decided I would develop my own 2-year curriculum with those materials. Things that I had found at clinics, things that I had stolen from other coaches, and some of the things that I had developed on my own. So that's what I did. In the process, I was inspired to write all that stuff on paper, and at some point decided these would be great resources for a young coach. So I wrote my book, Become the Inspiration, which is Leadership Principles and Fundamentals for the Beginning Coach. It was a real labor of love. I enjoyed the process and learned a great deal. There will not be a sequel. If you develop a leadership group for your own school, you will have plenty of online resources such as books and manuals that you'll be able to choose from in the development of your curriculum. But don't be afraid to use your own materials. You probably have files of documents that will be extremely useful and purposeful in the development of your own program. This is the cover that I used for our second year curriculum, and the document on leadership was something that I first heard at the Iowa Football Coaches Clinic when it was presented by the late, great Coach Ed Thomas. It's a very special statement on leadership. This is a sample agenda for our leadership group meetings. We meet once a month, typically the third Wednesday of each month, and we meet at 8 o'clock, and our meetings run about 45 minutes. You could run your meeting so that students would not miss any class time. Ours do miss a little bit of class once a month. I'll meet with the officers prior to the meeting and cover any materials that they might want to cover when we get to them, but this is typically student-led. Each of our programs that are represented are listed below, and there's a senior and a junior representative. In parentheses is a sophomore that would be replacing the senior at the December meeting. Our seniors have the responsibility of choosing a sophomore within their program that's going to replace them. They invite them to the December meeting, which would be our seniors last. When we get to the January meeting, we have elections for new chair positions, and in the February meeting, we vote on them. That next school year, when we get to December, our new seniors would then select another sophomore to replace them, and this becomes cyclic. On our agenda, under Life Skills and Awards, each month that committee chair will lead the voting for our Sports Person of the Month award. Prior to the meeting, I'll ask our leadership group members to send me both male and female nominees of great sportsmanship they've seen in practice, at events, in the hallway, and in the classroom. After the votes are tallied, we will announce the male and female recipient of this award through our school announcements, through our district Facebook page, Twitter, and I'll send an email out to both staff and students. I'll print up a certificate that you see on the right, and on the left is a yard sign that those recipients will be able to post in their front yards for the next month. This is a great way to bring honor to those students who are exhibiting one of the greatest values in all sports, which is sportsmanship. Also on the agenda under Life Skills and Awards is a section labeled Guiding Principles. This is actually something that I came up with several years ago after attending a session at our AD convention. I'll ask our leadership group members to come up with qualities that they feel are necessary for our student athletes to be a success at Central DeWitt. Each month, our committee chair will lead a discussion about one of those qualities, such as attitude or teamwork. Our leadership group will discuss in depth that quality, and our committee chair will write down all the responses. Later, I'll collect all those responses and put them together into a document like this. At our 8th grade orientation in the spring, I'll share these documents with both our parents and our student athletes so that they have a better idea of what our current student athletes feel is necessary for them to become a success as they get into high school. At the end of our agenda is typically where I'll spend most of my time talking with our leadership group. In the development of this 2-year curriculum, I've gathered materials related to things such as leadership topics and leadership qualities. Each month, I'll take several of those topics and qualities and dig a little deeper into them. They range from things such as dreams and visions to love and trust. Last month, we discussed topics such as adversity and focus. And as it turns out now, our discussion about adversity was well timed. Here's an example of some other items that I've included during our discussions of leadership topics and leadership qualities. Some of these I might find as I'm reading a book and will include them. I find others online or simply just things that we gather during our journey through education. You'll notice throughout some of these documents, I like quotes. Quotes are extremely inspirational for me, so I like throwing in quotes from time to time. Our leadership quality discussion last month dealt with integrity and morality. Each month, I print off documents for our leadership group members to use at our meetings. Besides the actual agenda and items that I've included for leadership topics and leadership qualities, I like to include other documents that we can cover and help them in leadership development. For example, the item on the left will discuss the various leadership levels, different leadership styles, and types of leaders so that they not only get an idea of where they're at in terms of leadership, but give them an idea of other levels that are out there for them to strive for. I also like to include surveys and evaluations. This is a good one, a team leadership self-evaluation where they get to actually rank themselves and see where they're at in terms of both vocal leadership and being a leader by example. Here are some other examples of items that we've used for discussion during our meetings. The one on the left was used as an introduction to developing a mission statement, and the one on the right was a document on purpose versus goals and an introduction to goal setting. This is the result of the document on the development of a mission statement, and actually an item that I use in a PowerPoint during our 9th grade orientation so that we give our parents and our students an idea of what we're trying to accomplish through our involvement in activities at the high school level. These are some of the items that we would use in our discussion about goal setting. Some of these I've developed myself as a coach or now an AD. Some of these are used in our other programs, but generally we just want to get our student athletes thinking about setting goals and the importance of them. Here are some documents that we might use during our monthly discussion about the topic attitude. The chart on the right, which totals 100, is something that I picked up from Vernon Middle School in Marion when I was coaching middle school wrestling. Saw this on a bulletin board and loved the concept. So you never know where you're going to pick up items that you might use and share with your student athletes. Here again are some items that I would print off and share with our leadership group at our monthly meetings. The document on the right is something that I actually developed as a wrestling coach and dealing with the mental aspect of sports and nervousness and how to avoid the mental meltdown. We all go through that, but handling it sometimes determines our success. The document on the left is pretty self-explanatory, and I like these kind of visuals. I actually just sent that to our leadership group a few days ago to remind them that everything doesn't always go as planned. We need that reminder ourselves as well. On the far right is Ethan Pierce, a senior leader and chair of our community and social committee. For several years, he had talked about wanting to put together a leadership group podcast. So he asked several of his fellow members to join him in our first ever athletic leadership podcast. We took various topics that we discussed during the month and had quite a nice discussion. It was extremely insightful and actually inspiring to listen to our youth talk about the concepts of leadership. On the top right is a medallion that I have made for our seniors. After their last meeting in December and before graduation, I have these made, and just prior to graduation, I will give this to them as a token of my appreciation for them spending 2 years on our leadership group. Last few slides are actually not something that's part of our athletic leadership group, but something I've developed over the years, first as a head football coach, and I've used it since as now an AD. Several years ago, I attended a coaching clinic in Chicago and listened to a highly successful coach from Ohio that was sharing a document that he put together for every Friday of their football games, something that he had titled Game Day. It was a document, and at that time, there wasn't mass social media or emails, but he would put this document together and make it available for the students in preparation for their football games. So I liked the idea and started developing my own game day of sorts for the Fridays of our football games. As he had mentioned, it was highly successful, and our kids liked reading all about the upcoming game, the lineups, some insight into the history of the games, our opponents, etc. I enjoyed writing it, and when I became an AD, I thought I would do the same thing at the end of each sports season. So 4 times a year, I have developed this, which I call Saber Seasons. And on these pages, we have the introduction and then a carryover from my days as a football coach, our game day, where I have a review of each of our sports teams during that particular season, and also program records that may have been broke during the year. The next page, I'll pick out 4 seniors and a coach to highlight, so our student body, community, and faculty, as they read this online, get a chance to know a little more about those individuals. This does take a little bit of time and effort to create all these documents 4 times a year, but it's been a real labor of love, I guess, and I do enjoy writing. The last 4 pages, you can see I will include a little bit of Saber history. I've been a real historian of our community and school, so I love including that stuff. I'll contact a former graduate and include that in a section as to where are they now. This also gives me some information that we can use with our Hall of Fame process and knowing a little bit more about our former students and getting those credentials. I list the collegiate Sabres that are participating in that particular time of year. This one is during the fall, so we include collegiate volleyball players, cross-country runners, and football players. And then at the bottom, with our Hall of Fame, I will just give the history of one of our past inductees. And then in the springtime, I actually have a chance to introduce our next induction class. The next page, which I've labeled Saber Paw Print, is something that I also did during the football season. Probably should have been spending a little more time in X's and O's, but this is where I write a little bit of an essay. Something of interest that I found during that time of year, maybe a chance for me to talk to the kids about an important concept, whether it's keeping perspective or hard work or something along those lines, maybe a special interest story on one of the student athletes or a coach, or share some of my past history. Below that are footnotes where I include typically a little bit about some things that are going on, whether it's body composition testing coming up or the next sports season or our leadership group, something that might be going on with them. And the last section on that page talk just a little bit about what's happening with our youth sports programs that I feel are an important part of our overall program. The next 2 pages are dedicated to fine arts and then our clubs. I work either with a student leader in each of those groups or with our instructors, and they can give me some information as to what's been happening, what events are coming up. We get to highlight some of the successes in each of those groups and also give links to online resources where you might be able to go to the FCCLA website and find out more about them, or the FFA, etc. So it's a great document. One of our business secretaries helps me put this together as a link, and we link it to our district website so you can find it online or you can look at all the back issues. And if you'd ever be interested in looking at some of those, you can go to our district website and find those as well. I post this link through Facebook and through Twitter, and also sent a mass email out to our uh, school board members, to our faculty, to our students, and everybody gets a chance in review to see what's been happening during that sports season. This last slide is also something that has not been developed or used with our athletic leadership group, but something I would encourage you to think about using with your parents during an in-service of sorts. I use it during our freshman orientation when I'm talking to them about what the role is of a coach, what my role is, and what the expectations are for the parents themselves and our students. While I'm talking to them about those items and our other athletic items, I adjourn our student athletes, actually all the students, to the gym where they will sit down with a player panel that I developed from our athletic leadership group. I get 2 senior boys and 2 senior girls, and the kids have an open forum with them where they can ask questions about what it's going to be like when they get to the high school. It gives them a chance to ask some questions that maybe they're hesitant or nervous about. And our seniors were in that same boat several years ago when they were first entering high school. I pre-make some questions so that if the 8th graders are a little nervous about asking questions, we have some things that are important to be discussed. I also have 2 coaches monitor that conversation and help direct that conversation to make sure that they're talking about appropriate items. So this slide here is during a PowerPoint that I share with our parents, and it's really a great visual for them to see that there's a lot of success that can come from hard work when their student athletes are in high school, whether it's athletics or any of our extracurriculars, and something that at all levels they can strive for and actually create some great opportunities for themselves if things are done the right way. Again, I want to thank Harley for giving me the opportunity to give this presentation. I was excited about giving it. I'm somebody who, if you know me, I like to have a mic in front of me, and our banquets were quite long when I was a wrestling and football coach because I like to, talk about our successes and the kids. So this is an opportunity to talk about something that I've really enjoyed as an AD, and hopefully that you get an opportunity to take something from this that you might consider using or you'd like to use. Again, feel free to contact me at any time if you have any questions. With a recent announcement we had just yesterday, I'm awfully disappointed for those seniors who won't get a chance to participate in the spring. It's been quite a strange ending to my career and a little nostalgic and actually a little sad about not being able to say some goodbyes in the next few weeks. But you guys are the best. One of the things I've loved the most about being an AD is my fellowship with all those ADs who I've got to know and enjoy over the years and communicate with. So I wish you nothing but the best in your futures, and I'll be looking on with great pride.